My husband and I have been reading this material, and we feel, as best as we can understand, we live in the vortex. My question comes to you about parenting, because we feel that's a real mission for us. We have 6 children, 3 of them under the age of 8. We have twin 5-year-olds. I had them later in life. And I would say the best part of my life, because this is more of my spiritual discovery part of life. And so I am trying to model and emulate all of these teachings for these little amazing beings. So the question, when the house is not as amazing as I would like it to be, when the vortex has a whole new meaning, and, the 5-year-olds might be arguing or toys or sharing, and my husband and I are like, okay, get into the place, get connected, bring peace back and harmony to this family at this moment. So the question is really about others, and I don't want to say the word control, because obviously I know that is not where we want to be. How do we better influence the atmosphere in our home and in our children's beings more readily and easily in everyday life?
Well, you have to be in the vortex to do that. And of course that's easy to hear and not always easy to make happen. But when you said it's not, you see, it's never about others. It's always about you. It's always about you and your relationship to the vortex. We're having fun with the money cards earlier today as we were talking about how when you're outside the vortex, what you're observing hits you one way. And when you're inside the vortex, then it hits you another way. And the reason is because once you have a grasp, and you do, both of you do, of this vortex, and once you are, as you said, most often there or within reach of the vortex, once you're hanging around predominantly in the vortex, then as a problem is coming into focus, you're actually enjoying it because the solution is coming into focus at the same time, but you're on the solution part of the equation. You know yourself that as a parent that sometimes something can happen and it's just funny. And sometimes something can happen and it just makes you angry. And we want to submit to you that the difference between it being funny, making you laugh, and making you mad is where you were in relationship to the vortex when it happened. We also would like to suggest that while we will not ever give you responsibility for your children being in the vortex, children are most often inspired out of the vortex by their parents rather than into the vortex. Children are like your animals in that their proclivity is in. And it takes something really focused and unpleasant to bring them out, where most adults have just trained themselves out, and so it's harder for them to be in. And so if you will just say, my responsibility is not even to my children, my responsibility is to my vortex, my responsibility is to my relationship with my vortex, because I cannot begin to even approach my responsibility to my children unless I have really mastered this vortex understanding. And so you wrapped your question up. Your words could not have been more carefully or perfectly chosen. How can I do this with grace and ease and effectiveness? And we say, don't even try unless you're in the vortex, because it's fighting an uphill battle. You just can't buck your own current, you see. So give us an example of an out of the vortex moment, or of a situation that, and we'll just point out that you were out of the vortex.
Can't wait. Okay. So we're with the children mornings and late afternoons to evenings. They're very active. We have, again, 3 living with us at home, but 3 not far away in colleges and working and on the phone with us all the time. So we'll get home, let's say at 6 o'clock at the end of a busy day, just coming from activities. We have to get everyone fed, everyone bathed, everyone finishing homework. everyone.
All right, now, just listen to this approach. In other words, we have to do this. In other words, you don't feel free. You're talking about them as if they are your employers who you despise. There's a feeling of responsibility and sort of what you have to do. And so even as you are discussing this with us here, we can feel that this is a responsibility of things that you have to do, not necessarily things that you want to do. Now, that conflicts with what you said earlier, and we believed what you said earlier when you said, had these children later in life, and they are my greatest joy, and I feel that it is all part of this spirituality that I'm wanting to learn about and wanting to really be and apply. But when you are approaching it from what you need to get done, in other words, it's already a practiced out of the vortex stance. And so you're probably not from outside the vortex. We've never known anyone who could elicit cooperation when you feel that way. There is a basic flawed premise that you've got to get a handle on, because what we want to hear from you is, now what have you been doing? In other words, you said you get home at 6 o'clock. Where have you all been?
Well, we're home in the middle of the day, just my husband and I doing what we do on a daily basis, which varies. But around 3 o'clock, we get the kids and we do various activities with them. They are in art class or gym class or swim class, and we're loving that. We enjoy being with them.
All right, so now come back to the place that we come home at the end of the day.
We come home and we're a little bit tired. We've been up since 5 o'clock. And you know what? When I heard you say that, some nights I don't want to give them a bath. And some nights I do feel it is more a responsibility.
But you see, but here's the thing.
And I feel I'm out of the vortex.
When there's something that really matters to you, in other words, when you have something that you care about how it turns out, don't you pre-pave it? Don't you pre-plan it a little bit? In other words, when you're getting ready for a trip, don't you pack? And this segment intending that we've talked about for years, getting ready for the moment is more important than the moment itself. So you're home during the day. Do you have an opportunity to rest? Make that a higher priority. In other words, you want to be in the vortex when you collect your children. That nothing matters more than that. And what we started to say to you is that if you had made that a higher priority, and we know we can feel you all over the room saying, but stuff happens and there are responsibilities that we have, and time is short, and patience is short, and resources sometimes are short, and I'm up against the wall. And so Esther will say to Jerry sometimes, when Jerry will suggest that they meditate or that they do the breathing with this new meditation that we're all working with. And sometimes the reason that he wants her to do it is because he can feel that she's not in the vortex. And her reply often is, I don't have time for that. I don't have time. And what she means is, if you had on your list all the things that are on my list, in other words, it's a sort of defensive, you've got time because your list is not as long as my list. And you can take the luxurious time of getting into the vortex. I, on the other hand, don't have the luxurious time to get into the vortex. And we say to Esther and to all of you, that's just dumb. Because you must take the time to get into the vortex first. It's the only thing that really matters. So what we started to say is we want to hear you say, as you said at the beginning of your conversation, before you got too specific about it, it's the best part of our life and we just love being with our children, and nothing is more exhilarating than to be in the vortex and elicit cooperative, fun, familiar family behavior from one another. In other words, when we come together, this is when we're doing our co-creating. And a lot of parents don't really consider their time with their children fun, co-creative time. They consider it wrestle it to the ground time. They consider it discipline time. They consider it having to do stuff that I don't really want to do time. And you just can't have it both ways. In other words, you've got to decide that it is something that you care about and it's something that you want to feel good in, and get yourself pre-paved and vibrationally ready for it, and you'll have a whole different experience. Don't you love it when your children are inspired to a behavior that makes an improvement for all of you.
Absolutely.
Doesn't that just feel wonderful? And isn't that different than them dragging their feet and pleasing themselves when you're uptight and need them to cooperate? In other words, isn't it just such an interesting thing how badly a child will behave when you need their good behavior most? And the reason is because you can't elicit that when you need their best behavior is usually when you're out of the vortex. And when you're out of the vortex, you can't elicit good behavior. You just got to get that worked around in your mind.
And I have to tell you, I would say honestly, our home is like 90, I'm asking you about that small percentage.
We understand that, but
I know you feel that. And I know these children, as I said, I had them later in life and I went through a lot of, I did in vitro, I did a lot of things to have these twins, and I know they found me because I'm getting this, and they need to be raised that way.
But you see, you're getting, it's like what we were talking about earlier, about these statements in the vortex that are general, are easier to maintain. And so when you speak of your children, of course you adore them, and of course you do anything for them, and of course they are the best part of your life, and of course you want to be in the vortex with. In other words, we don't even need to say those words. They are so obvious to you and to everyone else. It's the nitty-gritty of life that takes you out of the vortex, and that's the part you have to practice being in the vortex about. In other words, it's those little things. It's not the big things. Big things will take you out of the vortex, but it's not usually what's taking you out. What's usually taking you out is just a sort of common scenario that you've let the scenario train you. And that's precisely what happened. And we could feel it in your approach when you said, we come home, even the canter of your conversation, we get home, it's 6 o'clock, we're all sort of tired, we've got to do this, and we've got to do this, and we've got to do this, and we've got to do this. And we say, when you feel about it like that, it can't go well. So you might as well just hole up and take what's coming, because it's not going to get any different as long as that is the basis of that segment of your day. And it's interesting because don't you notice that there are different parts of the day you feel different. In other words, there are parts of the day that it's just easy to be in the vortex. The longer the day goes, it's like you say, you get more tired, and the more physically tired you are, the less easy it is to stay in the vortex. Doesn't have to be that way, but you just need to tend to the vortex first, which means tend to your emotions first, which means tend to your thoughts first.
So as you are tiring throughout the day, because I think you described a cycle, most people wake up when it comes to even their health and what they call dieting or work. Everyone starts the day with, this is going to be great, and people's energy does get less and less throughout the day. And I think that is a good correlation to the vortex. So,
well, here's the point that we're making, and we want you to finish that sentence, but we want to give you this as a basis first. So we all accept that being in the vortex is much better feeling and much more productive, that there's much more leverage. In other words, no one's questioning that you want to be in there, and we're not all that helpful when we say just get in. In other words, just get in, except that we know that you often are. And so now what we're saying is be aware of whether you're in or not, and do all of your work from when you're in. So now follow the logic that you are offering and that we're offering back, because we're talking about exactly the same thing. It's more likely to be in the vortex at the beginning of the day when you're less tired than at the end of the day. It's more likely to be in the vortex if you've gone to sleep in the vortex. You will wake up in the vortex. If you go to sleep watching something that is unsettling, it's more likely that you'll wake. In other words, when you withdraw your consciousness into your slumber, when you return to consciousness, you pick up vibrationally right where you were. Even though you have not been offering resistance while you were asleep, the vibration is there when you wake up. So this is the logic that we want you to follow. So, because you said something that triggered this thought that's really important, that it's easier to be in the vortex earlier, and then as the day wears on, then it's harder to stay in the vortex. And for most people, that is the situation. But we want to suggest that you want to be so aware of your vortex that as you're catching your departure from it earlier on, and as each day goes by, you practice and catch your departure from the vortex earlier on, you'll get so you're spending more time in the vortex, and you'll get so that you're more aware when you've departed from it.